The movie kicks off in a deadly war zone in Iraq, where an al-Qaeda faction has just captured a large squad of American soldiers. Marine John Triton watches the terrifying scene unfold from afar, and his superiors explicitly order him to hold his position and wait for backup. But John can't just sit back and watch his brothers in arms get slaughtered. Realizing the soldiers are seconds away from being executed, he goes rogue and disobeys direct orders. John charges in, storms the compound before the execution can happen, and single-handedly wipes out the entire enemy squad to save the hostages. The very next day, John is called into the colonel's office. Due to his blatant insubordination, the colonel hands him his official discharge papers. John tries to plead his case, but the colonel simply thanks him for his service, admits he's one of the most lethal and effective soldiers he's ever commanded, and sends him packing. John heads back home to California, completely crushed by the loss of his military career. His wife Kate, on the other hand, is absolutely thrilled to finally have her husband back safe and sound. But as the days go by, John struggles hard to adapt to normal civilian life. Desperate to keep his mind busy, he takes a mundane job as a security guard. Kate does her best to comfort him, promising they'll figure out a way through this together. The very next day, a ruthless gang leader named Rome orchestrates a high-stakes jewelry store heist. He casually strolls into the store, where his crew, Morgan, Vasera, and Bennett, are already waiting inside. Rome plays the part of a wealthy customer looking for diamonds, but suddenly draws his weapons, forcing everyone face down on the floor. To create a distraction, he snatches a random woman named Angela from the crowd and takes her hostage. But there's a catch. The diamonds are locked behind thick, bulletproof glass. Rome forces the terrified store owner to open the vault, threatening to execute Angela if he refuses. Angela begs for her life, crying that she has kids. But the moment that vault door clicks open, Rome hands Angela a gun. The plot twist? Angela is actually part of his crew. The gang bags millions in diamonds and gears up to leave. But when the store owner realizes who Rome actually is, Rome executes him in cold blood. As they make their getaway, the cops pull up. Rome doesn't hesitate. He unloads a massive machine gun directly into a police cruiser, while Morgan blasts the second cop car, blowing it to pieces. The crew jumps into their getaway ride and speeds off. Later, detectives begin to suspect an inside job, as the stolen diamonds had literally just arrived at the store 24 hours prior. This heist was no coincidence. Meanwhile, John starts his first shift as a corporate security guard. Hours pass and he is dying of boredom, especially since his partner Joe does nothing but flip through magazines and complain. Joe brags that if he keeps his head down, he'll make manager in 2 years. But John quickly realizes Joe has been working this exact same desk for 9 years without a single promotion. Suddenly, the radio crackles. A guy is causing a massive scene on the 12th floor, screaming at his ex-girlfriend and trashing the place. John and Joe rush up there, and John doesn't even waste time talking. He physically scoops the guy up, carries him all the way to the lobby, and sets him down. But the guy's personal bodyguards show up and start shoving John. Big mistake. John easily dismantles the entire security detail, grabs the troublemaker, and literally throws him through a plate glass window. The guy screams that he's going to get John fired, and unfortunately, he does. John's new career as a security guard is officially over on day 1. After getting canned, John and Joe grab a seat to cool off. John confesses that the military is all he's ever known, and he just can't function in this slow-paced, normal civilian world. Joe gives him some solid advice, reminding him that change is the only constant in life, and telling him to appreciate the time he now gets to spend with his wife. Around the same time, Rome and Angela are chilling in their hotel room. Angela is totally freaked out about the bloodbath at the jewelry store, warning Rome that killing those people put a massive target on their backs. Rome calmly explains that he only killed the manager because he knew his real name, and that the rest of the plan is flawless. He promises Angela she has nothing to worry about and that he will never let anyone hurt her. Right then, Rome gets a burner phone call. The voice on the other end demands the stolen diamonds back in exchange for $6 million in cash. They agree to make the trade the very next day. Later that night, Joe drops John off at his house. Before getting out, John asks Joe to keep the whole getting fired thing a secret. John walks inside and lies to Kate, telling her work was great. But literally seconds later, the local news flashes on the TV, showing crystal clear security footage of John brawling with the guy in the lobby. Kate immediately recognizes him. Seeing how stressed and lost her husband is, she suggests they take a road trip to the mountains to decompress. John isn't thrilled at first, but Kate eventually talks him into it. The next morning, Morgan hits up a chop shop to grab a ride for the crew. The mechanic suggests a low-profile minivan, but Morgan ignores him and takes a flashy Cadillac. Cut to John and Kate, who are finally hitting the open road. After driving for a while, they pull into a rural gas station for snacks. By pure coincidence, Rome and his heavily armed crew pull into the exact same station. John heads inside the mini-mart while Kate waits in the SUV. As Rome is pumping gas, a police cruiser rolls up, instantly putting the gang on edge. The cop suspects nothing and just makes casual small talk with Rome. But Morgan, watching from the window, completely panics. He sneaks up behind the officer and shoots him point blank in the head. Left with zero options, Rome instantly guns down the second cop. Hearing the deafening gunshots, John rushes toward the door, but Bennett blindsides him with a fire extinguisher, knocking him out cold. Inside, Angela knocks out the cashier. The gang needs to flee, but their Cadillac is blocked. They spot John's SUV and decide to steal it. Seeing Kate inside, they take her as an insurance policy. John wakes up just in time to see his wife being violently kidnapped. As John staggers to his feet, Morgan blasts the station's fuel pumps, triggering a massive apocalyptic explosion. Miraculously, John survives the inferno without a scratch. He sprints through the flames, checks on the wounded cop, grabs the police cruiser, and radios for heavy backup. He floors it, giving dispatch his exact coordinates, and begins a high-speed pursuit. Rome spots the cop car in his rear view and orders his men to open fire. The gang unleashes a storm of lead, but John's elite military reflexes kick in. He dodges the gunfire and aggressively rams Rome's vehicle, trying to run them off the asphalt. The chase spirals out of control until Rome forces the SUV towards a cliffside edge. The gang concentrates their fire on John, forcing him to launch the cruiser straight off the massive cliff. As the car goes airborne, they completely riddle it with bullets until it violently explodes in midair and crashes into the canyon. But John is a Marine. He dives out of the moving car at the very last second. Up top, the criminals assume John is dead. Kate screams hysterically, accusing them of murdering her husband. Annoyed, Angela points her gun straight at Kate's head. Rome steps in and shuts it down, reminding the crew that Kate is their only leverage. Morgan starts aggressively arguing with Vesera, but Rome furiously demands they shut up and figure out how they are getting out of the woods. With their ride destroyed, Rome decides they're going to hike through the treacherous swamplands to shake the cops. When Kate starts mouthing off to Angela, Angela viciously knocks her out. Rome mocks Angela for overreacting, but forces Morgan to carry Kate's unconscious body through the swamp. Back at the flaming gas station, Detective Van Buren arrives on the scene. He gets briefed on the cliff jump and heads straight to the wreckage. Out of nowhere, John emerges from the brush, perfectly alive, and tells the detective his wife was taken. Van Buren orders John to stand down and let the police handle it, warning him that these killers are out of his league. John doesn't even blink. He makes it clear nothing is stopping him. Seeing the fire in John's eyes, Van Buren simply tells him he better hurry. John sprints directly into the wilderness to hunt them down. Deep in the swamplands, Rome and his crew were struggling. Kate wakes up and immediately starts fighting back, forcing Angela to strike her again while Bennett ties her up. The tension in the group reaches a boiling point. Morgan and Vesera get into a screaming match over whose fault this is. Tired of the endless bickering, Rome snaps. He pulls his gun and shoots Vesera dead, offering zero explanation. The rest of the crew is absolutely stunned but terrified enough to keep moving. Moments later, massive alligators glide into the water and begin ripping Vesera's corpse to shreds. John is tracking them like a predator. He reaches the spot where Vesera was killed, finding only bloody water and feeding gators. Meanwhile, Rome gets an angry phone call from his mysterious boss, who is absolutely furious about the body count. Rome refuses to back down, claiming his team did all the heavy lifting and keeping the diamonds for himself. The boss threatens to destroy him, but a police chopper suddenly roars overhead, forcing Rome to hang up and run. As they trek deeper into the woods, Morgan starts whining again about how dangerous this is. Rome tells him to shut his mouth. Rome randomly stops and asks Kate what she thinks of him. She spits venom, calling him a sick psychopath. Unfazed, Rome smirks and tells her she's gorgeous, claiming he would have made a move on her if he wasn't already with Angela. John is closing the gap, but as he moves through a dense patch of trees, he triggers a hidden trap. A heavy net snaps him up into the canopy. Unbothered, John slices his way out and drops to the ground, only to find a shotgun in his face. It's a local moonshiner who thinks John is a federal agent. John denies it, but the guy isn't listening. John easily disarms him, trying to explain he's just looking for his wife. But before he can finish, a second local sneaks up and bashes him in the back of the head, knocking him out. The police are closing in. Kate tries to scream for help, but Bennett violently covers her mouth. Elsewhere, John wakes up tied to a chair inside a dirty shack. The two locals interrogate him, convinced he's a cop leading a raid. John realizes they won't believe the truth, so he flips the script. He lies, claiming he is indeed a cop and that a massive SWAT team is currently tracking his GPS. The locals completely panic. Capitalizing on their fear, John launches himself into the air, shattering the wooden chair into pieces. He knocks the first guy out cold, engages in a brutal hand-to-hand brawl with the second, knocks him out too, and escapes into the woods. John keeps pushing until he reaches a massive lake, where he finally spots Rome's crew dragging Kate into an abandoned boathouse. Inside, the gang realizes the power is dead. Rome orders Morgan to find the backup generator. Morgan, terrified of horror movie cliches, refuses to go into the creepy basement, getting relentlessly mocked by the rest of the crew. He eventually caves and heads down. Just as Morgan gets the generator running, John drops from the shadows and attacks. Morgan smashes a glass bottle over John's head, but John overpowers him and violently stabs him to death. Back upstairs, Rome steps outside to make a call, demanding a getaway car and a boat. He sends Bennett to prep a speedboat docked outside and tells him to check on Morgan. As Bennett steps out, John ambushes him. An intense, brutal fight breaks out, ending with John killing Bennett and stashing both bodies under the floorboards. Suddenly, Detective Van Buren pulls up to the cabin. He orders John to back off, but John refuses. Realizing he can't stop him, Van Buren lets him do it his way. John cuts the main power, throwing the cabin into pitch-black darkness. Taking advantage of the chaos, Kate makes a run for it. Angela chases her down, and a vicious cat fight erupts. Kate gets the upper hand, but Angela quickly pulls her gun and corners her. At that exact moment, John completely shatters through a glass window, landing right in the room with Rome. Just as they face off, Detective Van Buren kicks the door open, aiming his gun at Rome and demanding the diamonds. Rome smirks, telling Van Buren to shoot John if he really wants the ice. To John's shock, Van Buren actually turns his gun on him. The plot thickens. Van Buren is Rome's corrupt boss. He orchestrated the whole heist. But Van Buren hesitates for a split second, and that's all John needs. John tackles the dirty cop, using him as a human meat shield, while Rome unloads his weapon into Van Buren. Using the crossfire, Rome escapes and grabs Angela and Kate. To cover their tracks, Rome shoots a propane tank, blowing the entire cabin to absolute pieces. John dives through the exploding debris and plunges into the water. When he surfaces, a Coast Guard patrol boat is there. The officer draws his weapon, refusing to listen to reason. Left with no choice, John beats down the officer, hijacks the heavily armed patrol boat, and speeds off after Rome. Rome steals Van Buren's cruiser, but quickly ditches it when the cops spot him. He and Angela run to the highway. Angela flags down a passing semi-truck, acts helpless, and then ruthlessly murders the driver. They hijack the massive rig and hit the gas. Out on the water, John monitors the police radio and hears about the murdered trucker. Remembering Rome's phone call, John realizes they are heading straight for Rita Marina. John beats them to the location. As Rome drives the massive semi-truck through the marina, John literally leaps onto the moving rig. He rips the passenger door open, grabs Angela by the throat, and hurls her out of the speeding truck. She gets completely flattened by an oncoming bus, dying instantly as millions in diamonds scatter across the pavement. Rome violently swerves the semi, smashing through wooden shacks and boats to shake John off. Eventually, John gets thrown off as the truck slams into a building and erupts in flames. Knowing the rig is done, Rome bails out, leaving Kate hopelessly handcuffed to the passenger seat. John sprints after the flaming semi just as it plummets off the pier and sinks into the ocean. Rome tries to ambush him, and the two engage in an absolutely savage, bone-crushing fight. John finally breaks Rome, throwing him directly into a roaring fire. Without wasting a second, John dives deep into the ocean to save Kate. He finds her trapped in the submerged truck, rips the door open, pulls her to the surface, and desperately performs CPR. After a few agonizing moments, Kate coughs up water and starts breathing. But it's not over. A horrifically burned Rome rises from the flames like a demon, wrapping a heavy metal chain around John's neck. John fights through the chokehold, manages to rip the chain away, loops it around Rome, and brutally snaps his neck, ending the villain once and for all. With Rome dead and the authorities finally arriving, John sits with his wife. He looks around at the absolute carnage and jokes that they really should have gone to the beach instead. They both share a laugh after surviving the craziest weekend of their lives. But here's the real question. If you were John Triton, would you have left those millions of dollars in diamonds scattered across the highway? Or would you have grabbed a handful before the cops arrived? Let me know your survival strategy in the comments below.